Congressman James Comer just asked the question no one in the media will touch. Who was really running the country during Biden's administration? And at this week's hearing, he dropped a bomb. Multiple Biden executive orders were signed with an auto pen with zero proof that Biden even knew what they said. And we're not talking about fluff policies. These orders destroyed jobs, banned liquefied natural gas exports, and appended lives. And if Biden didn't authorize them, then who did? Stick around after this video because I'll be showing a bombshell clip of Sean Hannity exposing the Biden cognitive decline and exactly how the media tried to brainwash people into thinking everything is all okay. This is Andy with TrendingPolitics.com. Hit like, subscribe, and let's dive in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Turner, I've launched an investigation, or the committee has, we all have, into the role of former senior White House officials in possibly abusing the authority of former President Joe Biden while the former president was rapidly deteriorating mentally and physically. We will be conducting transcribed interviews of a number of former White House officials to understand who was really making the decisions for President Biden. Your group, Power the Future, has expressed concerns that over half a dozen of the Biden administration executive actions, which were signed by the auto pen, related to climate policy should be deemed null and void. Again, due to the fact that they were signed by the auto pen without any public comment from President Biden confirming his knowledge of them. Now, why is it important that the American people know the truth about whether President Biden knowingly signed these orders, making significant and drastic shifts in our energy policy?
Thank you for the question, sir. We're looking at this from the sense of deceit of the American people. This is impersonation of the president. Staffers, of course, have a lot of leniency in what they do working on behalf of the president, but these executive orders that we identified, there's no evidence of Joe Biden in first person, in his voice as president, talking about them. And I see some Pennsylvanians on the panel. When you ban the export of liquid natural gas and you never get asked about it in person, one has to wonder if Joe Biden did it or if his staffer did it on his behalf.
You specifically expressed concern that President Biden was not aware of that specific action to implement the executive order pausing liquefied natural gas permits. Now, why are you specifically concerned the president was unaware of that specific order?
Well, there's an anecdote from earlier this year where Speaker of the House Johnson mentioned he was in conversation with President Biden and brought it up. And the president said, I don't know what you're talking about. At the time, that was understood as, wow, maybe the president's a little worse off than we realized. But maybe two things can be true. Maybe he really didn't know what Speaker Johnson was talking about. Mm-hmm. Maybe he had no idea he passed this executive order. And if the president has never asked about it and he hides from the press and there's no opportunity for him to get asked in public about it, how do we know he actually did it? And these are serious executive orders. This is not...
It is bizarre. You know, when President Trump signed his executive orders, we saw him sign the executive orders. He had a big event. He was, they were talking about the executive orders. They said, this is what this specific executive order is. We never saw any of that.
No, and lives were destroyed, sir. And when you ban the export of liquid natural gas, there are hundreds of thousands of men and women who work in the natural gas industry. Lives were destroyed. People went bankrupt because of that. And we have no evidence that Joe Biden himself actually
We haven't found any evidence either that, and ironically, unlike some of the investigations we've done in the past with respect to the former president, not many of the colleagues on the other side of the aisle are disputing many of the things that have come out in the Tapper book, the things that have come out with statements like what former Transportation Secretary Buttigieg and others have said, that they were shielded from the president. So we look forward to having these staffers come in. Our committee will be conducting transcribed interviews, possibly depositions, depending on how quickly they come in, and hopefully we'll get the truth to the American people. I want to switch gears and talk about the NGOs. The full committee has another investigation into the green energy scam. I don't know how else to put it, known as the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and the NGOs that receive significant amounts of money through it. Can you tell us a little bit about this and the NGOs and the left? Obviously, they advocate for initiatives as an excuse to spend billions in local communities, but enrich themselves too. who else benefits from these handouts? You know, every Democrat, I know Ms. Stansbury loves government programs. They love to spend money and create bureaucracies, but who really benefits from programs like this specific scam that I talked about?
The operatives aligned to these organizations, consultancy groups, PR firms, lawyers, and it's all just an enormous cabal.
That
They
sounds
hire
like a
each
base
other.
for one of the two political parties.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. We look forward to this committee working to get the truth to the American people and try to get spending under control. And we're going to see if these executive orders were really authorized by the president, or if this was being done unilaterally by some unnamed bureaucrats. Madam Chair, thank you for this subcommittee hearing. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields.
Let's get something straight. An auto pen is exactly what it sounds like, a machine that literally holds a pen and signs a document on behalf of someone else. And it's not new. It's been used occasionally by presidents for routine things like signing condolence letters or minor ceremonial proclamations. But when that same device is used to authorize massive policy shifts like banning liquefied natural gas exports or rewriting America's entire energy strategy, you have to ask, was it really the president making the call, or was it a staffer using a machine to fake legitimacy while Biden was completely out of the loop? And that leads perfectly into what you're about to see. Sean Hannity put together a devastating timeline of Biden's public decline from 2019 to 2025, and you have to see this short clip from that story. Take a look.
And this brings us to 2024, Biden's last year as your so-called president. Was he really? Anyway, as most of you know, Joe Biden was an utter train wreck. He barely worked, took a lot of naps, including during public meetings. Let's call a lid at 8 o'clock in the morning, meaning you won't see the president for the rest of the day. He wandered off, remember, during the G7 meeting in France, while other world leaders anxiously looked on. Come on, Joe, let me steer you back to where you belong. He also seemed completely lost during a Juneteenth concert, looking off into the distance with the 1,000-yard stare of his. At one point in 2024, he even walked straight into a jungle during a trip to Latin America. I'm going to go for a walk. We showed you all of this very real footage. Remember, he would shake air, and he didn't know whether to go exit left or exit right. He had no idea. Somebody would have to, oh, come on, Joe, we'll walk you off the stage. We would show you this footage day in, day out, night in, night out, while the other media outlets accused us of producing what they called cheap, fake videos. Take a look.
We're hearing about so-called cheap fakes. It's playing out on right-wing media, Fox, New York Post, and so on. And all of this is to try to make the case that Biden is slipping, he's confused, and so on.
There are a lot of videos going around about President Biden on social media. Which ones are real? Which ones are deceptively edited, now being called cheap fakes?
A lot of memes and what the White House is calling cheap fakes.
Cheap fakes are a little bit simpler. They're cheap. They're just distorted, out of context videos, chopped up in certain ways, constructed in certain ways. That's what we're seeing. That's what the Biden administration, the Biden campaign is so worried about right now.
That's June of 24. They had 4 long years to figure out what we figured out in 2019.
After watching that, the question becomes impossible to ignore. How did we even spend 4 years under a president so clearly unfit for office? Who was really making decisions behind the scenes? Because it sure as hell wasn't Joe Biden. The media mocked anyone who dared to raise these questions. They called it cheap fakes, ran interference, and gaslit the entire country into pretending it was all fine. But it wasn't, and you know it wasn't. The footage was real. The policy destruction was real. And now that Biden's out and President Trump is back in office, the truth is finally coming out. We're seeing the wreckage that Biden left behind. Executive orders signed by an auto pen. Industries gutted. Foreign policy in shambles. And all the while, unelected staffers and special interests had their hands on the wheel while the so-called commander-in-chief wandered off of camera. What Comer's committee is doing now matters because history needs to record what really happened during the Biden years, not the media's version, but the actual story. This is Andy with TrendingPolitics.com. Stay informed, stay vigilant, like and share this video, and I'll see you next time.